Namaste dosto, a very good morning and welcome to Glocal Khabar. I'm your host Shreyasta, together with
Hello everyone, this is Ayush Pal and I'm the co-host of Glocal Khabar. And we together welcome you to our very first episodes of Secrets of Sovereignty. Just to remember, Glocal Khabar is a one-stop destination for all of the contemporary geopolitical developments happening around the world.
Yes, thank you so much, friends, for tuning in. Today we have our esteemed guest, Mr. Prashant Vaidyanaraj. He is the editor in chief of Samvad World and has formerly been the bureau chief of Organizer Weekly and even Asima English. Along with that, he has even edited two books on international affairs, which were compilation of articles from uh, various renowned personalities in the domain. So that's a great wealth of knowledge, sir. And thank you so much for participating with us.
Hey guys, thank you for hosting me. It's so nice to be on Glocal Cover, and the name itself is so intriguing that makes one think what's it about, and it's very interesting. And thank you for hosting me.
Yeah. So
Yes.
before we start our gradual question, just one question that I was very curious to know from you: that what was the so-called vision of Samvad, and what was the so-called kicking motivation that led to the inception of Samvad World?
Great. Yeah, so we started Some Other World in late 2020s. So the reason behind starting it was like we had several portals covering international affairs or the mainstream media covering international affairs, but the missing link was how do you gaze at the world from the Indian perspective or the Bharatiya perspective, which we call. So what is happening is the source for all our news and analysis was the Western media, right?
Yes.
And every Western media used to gaze at us in their own viewpoint, their own biases, their own prejudices. And for us, that was the source for our own analysis. It's like there was no reversing the gaze happening for our end. But and fortunately, we had many experts who had brought this up. But we didn't have a specific platform which hosts. It could be scholars, it could be students who were concerned about this, but they didn't have a platform to voice their either concerns or their analysis. So we started Some Other World, both as an portal to give a platform for writers and analysts who wish to look at the world from Indian perspective, and also as a portal which will have analysis across the world from Bharatiya perspective. So it was a with a dual purpose which we started, and we have come quite a long way. And I mean, Ayush is a very integral part of it. So that's how we started. And I mean, in this journey, apart from publishing articles on the website, we also have published several books. Our first book was an ebook on Afghanistan. It was one of the first kind of efforts where we compiled articles on Afghanistan. It was just after Taliban took over Afghanistan. So then we published two books in 2022, one in Kannada and one in English. Then last year we had Reimagining India, and this year the works are on. So it's also both, you could say, a media effort and an academic effort at reversing the gaze or looking at the world in Bharatiya perspective.
That's amazing, sir. That is somewhat we also felt when we were doing Local Khabar, and we have our contemporaries in the media also, and we really follow Dr. Jaishankar and Modi ji for really putting the Bharatiya perspective. So this brings me to the very first question. Now that Modi government is in its third term, and it has been very ambitious since its inception regarding the foreign policies, and it has been a major proponent of Look East policy to the neighborhood first policy. So, what changes do you think in the present Modi administration is coming out in terms of policies, or in terms of the priorities of these policies in this regime? Yes, sir. That's my question. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question again. So, see, first thing we need to understand is the paths the Modi government has traversed in the last two terms or the last 2 decades. We have transitioned during the last decade. We have transitioned from a policy paralysis, even in international affairs, to a pretty active foreign policy in the last 10 years. So the era between 2004 and 2014 was like as a country, we told whatever was thrust upon us, whether be it neighborhood policy or our relations with the giants or the West or the US. There was a lull in everything. There was no much except the nuclear agreement which they tried to sign under Manmohan Singh. There was nothing much happening. We lost out too many regions and agreements to China. The BRI took a huge step during that 10 years. So, but from 2014, I would like to say with a caveat that there have been some drawbacks and failures, but the last two terms of Modi government has been very active in terms of foreign policy, and especially in terms of taking a stand on every issue which matters to the country, whether it's defense, neighborhood, or the intervention from external agencies, FTAs, trade, defense agreements, everything. And the major turning point in the last two terms has been The earlier, if you could say, the earlier policy of India was like equidistant from everyone. That Nehruvian era of non-aligned policy
Yes.
continued even for the to the better part of 2014 till 2014. But later on, instead of either aligning to a bloc or remaining aloof, the Modi government consciously took a decision to be equally palatable to everyone. But the core was whatever is in the interest of India, like equidistant. It's not equidistant, equal friendship with all, to paraphrase Dr. Jaishankar, equal friendship with all, but the core was interests of India,
India,
which is
India
paramount,
first.
and which
Yeah, in a very India first
India first,
perspective.
exactly.
Yes, yes.
Exactly. And this has been evident whether even quite recently, if you take the way we handled oil supplies from Russia during the war, um, the agreements with both with Russia and with US and European countries, whether it's trade deals, the upcoming FTAs, which are then, I mean, also to countering China militarily as well as in terms of trade. So it's been pretty hectic and active foreign policy arena in the last two terms, and I don't think it would be any different in the coming term. And I would say the challenge would only be increasing. It would be interesting to see how the Modi government goes, and given the track record of the last two terms, I'm sure China would be the focus, and maintaining an equal friendship with both the blocks, the China-led bloc and the US-led bloc, would be very important for India, and we will see how it goes.
Excellent analysis, sir. Excellent. Thank you
Yeah,
for the insights.
Very comprehensive answer, sir. So I was listening to your answer, and that brings me. And the 2 points specifically which you mentioned was about the nuclear deal that happened during the Manmohan era back in 2008, 2008. So that brings to
right.
the next question, sir, and that is with respect to United States of America and the Indian relation. We have seen that in 21st century it has been an absolute new turn with respect to American relations with India, but still there are certain differences that happen. This is why we say that there are some kind of roses and thorns that exist in the relationship. And
Right.
2024 is really important here because coming the November 4th, we have the presidential elections in the United
That's
States
right.
of America. Yeah.
Right.
So how
Right.
do you see the whole American-Indian relationship in the context of 21st century? And do you believe that the coming November election have any impact with respect to New Delhi's relations from Washington?
Oh, yes, even another great, very important question in terms of India-US relations. So, in my analysis, I mean, as you also know, Ayush, we have covered quite extensively about the US elections and India-US relations. The trade is one part. The other part is the mutual respect and the mutual um, what is it? One mutual respect and mutual friendship, which we have built with US after the Pokhran tests. If you remember, after the Pokhran tests, US had levied sanctions on India, and the relationship took a downhill, especially during the Kargil war, where US had almost vocally supported Pakistan. From then on to the nuclear deal and the last decade, the India-US relationships have come a long way. And primarily, one of the factors is this, whether we like to agree or not, is China. Uh, US sees India as a bulwark against China and a close friend in the Asian continent. That's from the US perspective. Um, but is it seen only in that way? No. Trade is one of the biggest things which pull the India-US relations. As you can see, the deal with we a huge deal which we had with Boeing. Then the military deals, the Apache helicopter, and the upcoming missiles, Stinger missiles, and many such deals. Which also trade is one major factor. And irrespective of who comes to power, I don't think that would change. The and it will only increase, right? And it is also in the interest of India, where especially to counter the threats from China, it's good we have a good relationship in military and trade with US. Now, the other aspect, US kind of using India as a bulwark against China is something I think the Indian government is well aware of, and it doesn't want to be seen as a lackey of US when countering China. India has its own foreign policy, and India has its own interest in South China Sea or the ASEAN countries or in its neighborhood. And India would never do something, only to please the US in order to counter China. We have our own trade deals with China. We have our own military standoff with China. India will maintain its own independent policy. That is for sure, whether whoever comes to power. But one thing that might change is uh, uh, the way US itself sees China. They, in case Trump wins, Trump has been a vocal critic of China. There might be some, increased friction with respect to Taiwan and South China Sea. And it would be, I mean, India would have its own policy, and it wouldn't pull anything just for the sake of the US. That is for sure. Um, and most of the survey says Trump is most likely to return. Recently Trump has been warming up to the Indian voter there. Indian diaspora is a huge factor. It's a pretty big factor in several constituencies, several states there. So without Indian diaspora speaking up, through their votes, no, I mean, either Trump or Biden will have a tough time. So they will be warming up to India. Um, And but one thing I see is in terms of if Trump returns, in terms of trade, they might be some protectionist measures taken by the Trump administration. But overall, this I think the kind of negotiations or the trade deals we have would continue for some time. And I would end this by saying, there's a joke which goes on in the U.S. administration. They say like whoever comes to power, whoever wins the election, the CIA is always in power. I mean, I don't completely believe in that, but I mean, there is an overarching U.S. interest which you know, kind of overshadows the election victories. That's what many people say. There is American military-industrial complex, which works according to its own interests,
Yes.
whether it's Trump or Biden. So they control the politics of US. So there are several factors, and these things will be interesting. And American military industrial complex will always be, looking for war or some kind of scenarios to sell its weapons. And there are several factors, but overall, I think. And then another factor which I wanted to touch upon is the intervention from the recent allegations which you saw, intervention from US NGOs in elections, whether it's Indian elections or other elections. These kind of pricky points, which is not spoken overtly by the MEA or during our bilateral talks, but there are some prickly points which I think India will also raise up with the new administration, with the new Khalistani angle coming up. So there are some prickly points. There are overall, I think it's more towards a favorable relationship. There are some prickly points which will be ironed out in the new Modi term and also with the new administration. So that's how I see it.
So that's a very wonderful answer, sir. And let's put it in the very American politically correct way. Let the best candidate win. Even though we know
Right.
everything
Yeah.
is a
Yeah.
military complex. So that brings me to the very third question of our segment, and it's mostly related to South Asian countries who were recently invited by India, and even PM Hasina from Bangladesh was here to visit us.
Right.
And so, why does South Asia matter so much for India, and what do you think is its positioning or role in this entire South Asian geopolitics?
Yeah. Um, there are two aspects to it. One is India's traditional ties with Southeast Asian nations, irrespective of any other power, whether it's China or somebody else. That's the traditional relationships which we had with them. So both civilizational and pretty recent relationships. And the second factor is obviously China. So talking about the first point, um, I mean, right after independence, still about 6 decades, there were not much importance given by our, foreign policy experts to the South China Sea. Uh, but however, later on, after we opened up the economy, both for the sake of economy and also emerging threats, we started the lookist policy, which went ahead during the Vajpayee era, and then also made some improvements during the Manmohan Singh era. But under Modi, after 2014, it became the Act East era. That's when we took more active interest in engaging with the Southeast Asian nations. We had a Buddhist circuit, then we had a very active engagement in terms of both cultural and trade. Uh, but coming to the second factor, the China factor, that has been very challenging. Whether it's ASEAN countries or these countries which we have traditional ties, civilizational ties. Now, for every country, economy is a huge deal, and all these most of Southeast Asian countries are looking forward to improve their economy. So China has been a major factor. The BRI has worked very well for many of them, um, and that's where India has to pull up its socks. And RCEP was one of the calling a major calling for all these countries, and they went ahead, and India didn't sign for its own concerns, right? But in terms of trade, India can go ahead in terms of free trade agreements with many of these countries, because since we didn't get into the RCEP, right? So China will be a major factor, but you know one thing which works in India's factor is the civilizational ties. But second thing is beyond that. I think we need to have more free trade agreements with many of the Southeast, especially ASEAN nations, to see that we have a say, and then we should also ensure that I mean our voice is heard in the whatever is happening in the Malacca Strait in terms of especially in terms of defense and security. Malacca Strait, what's happening in South China Sea. I mean now we are dealing with we have defense ties with Philippines, and we have chip ties with both China, Vietnam, and Taiwan. So I'm sure the government will focus on these trade ties along with taking leverage from our civilizational ties. But China is given in terms of trade, China is pretty ahead in this. But that's where the government has to pitch in. It's also a pretty big challenge, and I'm sure things will have some interesting times in the Southeast Asian region.
Absolutely. Indeed,
Yeah.
sir. We have been talking about United States of America. We have been talking about South Asia. And there's a new
Right.
terminology that has been brought up recently, and that terminology is about global South. which combinedly contains of Latin America, African countries, Southeast Asian countries, South Asian countries, which basically have not been given the so-called political economical representations in the United States of America-led world, and they wanted some sort of autonomy. They wanted some sort of say into the global set. This is what their stake is after. And now we see India, which has been situated into the heart of the Indo-Pacific, and we have seen that the Indian government is very much committed in maintaining relationship with them because India sees the vacuum to maintain relationship with them because India sees that these countries are in need of leadership because their voices have not been heard, and we can be the very soon leaders. In the global South countries, where do you see India's voice? Or can we conclude a fact? Can I conclude a fact from this discussion that India is the indeed voice of the South? Or you would say that it's very premature to say this because there are China, Eurasian-led bloc, and the other countries. Where do you see all of this?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So before concluding whether we are indeed the voice of the global South, let's see what has happened in the last few years. The African economy is not really taking up the challenge. The African economy is still low. It's very much dependent on the investments from outside.
FDIs, yes.
Similar with South America, right? Argentina, though now it looks a bit stable, both Argentina and Brazil economy, they're not doing very well. They require renewed investments from abroad. Now, when we say global South, Africa and South America are the major constituents, right? And of course, we have the Asian countries, Asian nations. Now, interestingly, what has happened is the BRI has taken a huge, have made a huge leeway in all these countries, whether it's Africa or South America. Not much in South America, but mostly Africa. Though India has made some inroads into Africa, it's very much behind in South America. Traditionally, we are almost non-present in South America, but still we had good government-to-government negotiations. But it's not in a way China's investing in South America. Now, the third fact is very recently, Russia is claiming to be the leader of the global South. If you see the recent statement last week from the foreign ministry, they said they are the natural leaders of the global South vis-a-vis the West, which were the colonizers, and Russia, though it was a power, it didn't colonize during the colonial times. So this is the way they're putting it forward. But frankly speaking, purely in terms of trade, China is way ahead of India, and Russia had some mostly with the military deals during the communist era, which is still continuing both in Africa and South America. Because Argentina has got very good defense relations with Russia, right?
Yes.
So Russia, with Russia pitching in, Russia and China coming together, I don't think they would. Whether it's Russia or China, let's be frank. Every country, whether it's Russia or China, they want to be the leaders of a particular bloc, and they will continue to do that. And India, yes, there's something as local consumption. Yes, we are happy. The government has been very active on becoming the voice of the global South, and then we hosted a very successful G20, and all that's fine. But in the outside world, what's happening is like, it's not. We have to, see it with open mind. China and Russia are also equally trying. Why? For the spot of being the voice of the global South, and strategically, if you ask me, the strategy of the West to isolate Russia is actually not working well for them because they're only pushing it away and pushing all the countries towards the Russia-China bloc. So if you ask me, it's too early to say if that India would be the voice of the global South. But yes, India is doing, like, India had one good initiative was the International Solar Alliance, and most of these countries are below the Tropic of Cancer, and most of them are also part of the global South. And these things have worked in a factor, and it will continue to work in a factor. But unless we see substantial improvement in relations in terms of trade, I don't see much happening on that side. But yes, given the few threats of improvement in the last decade, I'm sure, improvement is on the cards. But to answer your question, Ayush, it's very early to say that India would be the voice of global South. Next, coming this term would be, very interesting to see. As I said, both Russia and China vying to become the voice of the global South. It's a kind of a three-way contest, if you ask me. But yes, we have a lot of challenges even there. It's not like, it's not a cakewalk.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir. I think that's
did that answer your question, Ayush?
Indeed, sir. It does.
Yeah. Right.
Yes, sir. So thank you so much for the unique perspectives and the latest geopolitical insights, which sometimes in the rush of a lot of things, sometimes people don't really analyze it and they don't realize that these are the events
Yes.
that are defining day-to-day work organizations and are forming new relations or are bringing new opportunities. So we as Glocal Khabar host really felt that, we should take inspiration from Samvad World, and hopefully in future we contribute as well and work together and in the many more episodes of Secrets of Sovereignty, we will slowly and slowly, unlock these small things that, we see that every small nugget, is a golden opportunity, because we are such a huge country, and
True.
sometimes like young people like me and Ayush, we just see US or other things, but Russia is opening up. There are other countries. Things have changed after the the global crises. There's a supply
True.
chain corona after the corona and whatever its aftermath, the economy, the interest
Exactly.
rates.
Yes.
So I don't think, I mean, we do see the de-dollarization and whatnot. So there are many new things that will be coming to the new world, and there is a world order fight going on. But let's see, may the best country win, and
True.
or have the best relationship, as Dr. Jaishankar has said. So this brings us to the end of our very first episode. Thank you so much, sir, and we really wish that we continue the series further and have more interesting questions for you. And thank you so much for your key insights. Yes.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, thank you for hosting me in your first talk show. And the questions were very good, and it is something which average reader needs to know. And I'm surely thank you. I mean, in fact, it gave me an opportunity to look at the whole thing, what's happening across the world. Um, I'm sure. I mean, all the best to Glocal Khabar, and I'm sure you will grow from strength to strength. Yeah, looking forward to talk to you guys again.
Thank you so much, Prashant sir. So that brings us to the very first. That brings us to the end for the very first episode. Under Secrets of Sovereignty. There's a message to all of the viewers. Stay tuned for the upcoming notification from the group. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Local Cover.